talk show is brought to you by
Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, and your host, Hurricane H, as usual, with a new topic, new show, new guest, and a topic of the season, literally. This is the fall coming up on us, and winter is also on its way. And I can tell you, well, at least if you're in the North Hemisphere, because this show does go worldwide, but it doesn't matter what part of the world you're in, there's got to be a seasonal change for you, and allergies can be part of it. The cold can be part of it. And today, my guest, Joyce Dales, she is the CEO of a company that produces products that can help you and your kids around these things. Buzzagogo is the parent company, and Cold Be Gone. So Cold Be Gone, not Be Gone, Be Gone. I love actually the spin on it. So we'll talk about all that. Joyce, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's my pleasure. I know we try to crunch this show in because this is the time where we need to educate people on how to best handle these things. And I know that the marketplace is flooded. I mean, you'll start seeing ads everywhere right now on anything allergy and cold medicine, all the stuff. But that's one piece of it. But then there's some people that may not be interested in so much chemical or like pharma products versus like maybe some natural based products. So we can talk about that. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, some people use the Claritins and Zyrtex, and some people use some more natural remedies or herbal based medicine, and you name it. So we can talk a little bit about that. So let's, Joyce, take us back to the history behind how you started this company and why.
Well, it started about, I would say, 15 years ago. I am a mom, first and foremost, before I became the queen bee of this company. And I grew my family through international adoption. So my little girls are adopted from Vietnam and China. And at that time, international adoption was, it's basically closed down now. You almost can't participate in international adoption anymore. But in the middle of our adoption for our little girl from Vietnam, in the middle of that, she needed emergency open heart surgery due to Agent Orange. Her heart was a legacy defect. So here we are 5 generations out from the Vietnamese War, the Vietnam-American War, and there's kids still being affected because Agent Orange is a forever chemical and it's in 2 feet of soil. And unless we scrape that soil away and remediate it, they're going to continue farming in that soil. And that has long-term genetic effects for the children. And so my girl was one of them. And that was sort of the beginning of the company, because when she came home, she was called immunocompromised, as any international adoptee would be. New environment, new food, everything's changed for them. That's an immunocompromised situation. On top of that, she's just had open heart surgery and she's recovering. So immunocompromised was new in my world. I'd kind of heard it before when my dad was on chemo, but this was like different. This is my baby. And for anybody that's a parent, that's other level stuff, right? So when she came home, I lived like we've all been living for the last 2 years, every sniffle in a store, and I'm like running the other way with my newborn. So yeah, that's how I started the company. It was basically out of fear.
Well, fear and I guess the hope to make it easy and cured and best. And ultimately, I mean, there are so many things you could have done. I mean, just use the conventional stuff, but you took it upon yourself to create your own concept. Why is that? I mean, was that a trust thing, in the system, or like, in the products, or just a preference in terms of besides the business piece of it? So listen, I'm all supportive of all people that actually create their own businesses. So kudos and thumbs up for that. But I mean, I'm assuming it's a combination of all the above, right? I mean, it's the fact that you needed to take care of your daughter. Second is that you wanted something that is natural, and of course, the luxury of having your own business, and that's always a sweet thing. So am I right in that angle, or?
Yeah, you are. Eventually, the journey, all of those things are true in the journey, all of them. But in the beginning, I think I was motivated. I had been a school teacher, and so I had the experience of getting sick every month of your life while you're a teacher, and that's miserable. But then on top of that, I was raised in rural Maine. I grew up in poverty in rural Maine, as rural as you can imagine. Okay. So I grew up in the woods of Maine at my grandmother's apron. And for her, every dandelion wine can cure anything, right? For her, nature has all the solutions for what we have. And so that mindset has always been in me. And when my baby first came home and there was this attitude that every sneeze and sniffle was a direct threat to our lives, I became very New England stubborn about it, where I was like, no, I don't believe that. I believe there's a lot more we can do about that. And so how I started my journey was to research. I became, because I'm OCD as heck, I became the researcher of all researchers, which you do when you get a new baby, right? I wanted to learn everything we could about how we get sick. Now, we've all heard wash your hands, of course, right? But here's why. Because 99% of the time, we catch colds, flus, and other pathogens by touching one of the holes above our neck: eyes, ears, nose, mouth. Believe it or not, you can scratch your ear and that pathogen will go through the journey, through the sinuses to the upper nasal passages where there are receptor cells, where it will latch on and then sit dormant for 1 to 14 days. It's just long dormancy phase. And then it passes its DNA, its code to your cell. And then your cell begins replicating it millions of times over. And that's when you feel the thing in your throat or whatever your thing is, your first thing. And so I was like, well, that's really empowering information. I can do something with that information. It's not just about washing your hands. It's about not touching anything above the face when you are out of your own biome, out on the streets, living your life. You come home, drop the keys, clean the phone, wash your hands, boom, you're in your own biome of germs and grossness, and that's fabulous. But when you're out on the streets, this is always infected. Your hands are always infected with cold or flu or whatever. So I thought that was really interesting. And the other thing I learned through the international doctors when my daughter first came home was, when I was talking to them about this, they're like, oh yeah, everything colonizes in the nose. Now, back then that was new information for me, but now everybody gets it. Like for 10 years, I've been teaching about the nose and everybody's like, okay. Now everyone's like, oh yes, everything colonizes in the nose. And when I was learning about that, I was speaking to this one infectious doctor, and he's infectious disease doctor. And he said, yeah, 25% of all medical personnel are always colonized with MRSA in the nasal pharynx. And how we deal with that is we burst ampules of alcohol into the nose in order to do away with the VRE or MRSA colonization. But when we do that, we inadvertently can create antibiotic resistant bacteria if we don't get the whole thing, or we destroy the natural pH, the natural moisture, we stun the cilia, and we accidentally kill all the beneficial bacteria. So here I am with these two pieces of information that are profound to me. How you get sick, it's beyond just washing hands. It's really about touching your face. And your nose is a biome. It's your first line of defense to your whole immune system. And it has to have the perfect pH, the perfect functioning mucosal system, the perfect beneficial bacteria, blah, 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 blah. So I'm squirreling these nuggets away, and I spend a few years just researching like a mad woman. Now, I've always been into honey as medicine because that's my grandmother's upbringing, and I've been obsessed with the topic. And at that time, super honeys were becoming part of our lexicon. People were talking about honeys that could do more than your average honey. All honey has peroxide activity, is great for wound care and stuff, but there were these honeys around the world, like Scottish Highland heather honey, Manuka honey, honeys in the Pacific Rim, Brazilian red, that could have effects on cancer, have effects on antibacterial resistant bacteria, have effects on viral infections. So I was amazed by this. So I thought, maybe there's a way we can impact the colonization zone, which is the nose, and do something during that dormancy phase, and also impact the colonization load, once you do become colonized, to prevent it from reaching your lungs and becoming a more severe or lengthy illness. So that was all of my thinking. I know that was a lot of information, but imagine that all twirling around in my head for 2 years.
Well, that is a lot, but I think that is super good stuff that you just gave us right now. I mean, you broke it down literally to, the steps that, and on all the elements that actually we should be aware of. And you're right. I mean, we're talking today post-pandemic. I mean, we still don't know how the outcome of this upcoming season is going to look like, because there's always talks about Corona coming back and, at different levels. But, it doesn't matter if it's the Corona, it's the standard flu, the allergies, all that stuff is coming up. But really, to your point, one of the things that we all have become so worldwide about is touching. And really, cleansing those hands, because that's where we capture every single thing out there. And throughout the Corona, everybody became more sensitive than ever. I mean, prior to that, people, they were weird about it. It's okay, whatever. But once this happened, everybody became like super freak about cleaning their hands and washy everywhere and all that good stuff, and you're right, touching the face has become, everybody's getting those face shields and masks on and everything. So we became more aware, and that's a big, difference from prior to that. I mean, now you mentioned something that is also very interesting. You're a teacher. And as a parent, I mean, I've had 3 kids, and, my oldest is 26, my youngest is 16 now. And I can tell you, throughout those phases, there's always a risk at home for somebody getting some sort of a cold or flu or some bug coming in, because children are not, as aware the way they, especially at a younger age. And so that's easy, transmissible, type of situation. And then you wind up with it. And the teachers, you guys are exposed big time. And I know friends who are teachers, and that's some common complaint that everybody has. So they always have to, act a little extra cautious around, all these things, and disinfect things and make sure. But you're right, it's the awareness piece. But what we probably, and a lot of people may not have been aware, is that, to your point, is that it starts in that ENT business, right? So that's like, ENT doctors, right? They cover all those elements, and those are the main hubs. I mean, your mouth, your nose, your ears, your eyes are always open. I mean, and at the onset of the pandemic, everybody says, do not touch your eyes, on your ears and stuff, because people are like, really, my eyes? Yeah, you can get this stuff right through that thing, and now it's body fluids. It's all gonna get into your body and somehow, and you're right. That cross contamination of everything we touch, you don't even think about it, and then you bring it home. Your concept of kind of having, all these measures in place. So when you get out of the house is one thing. When you come in, you disinfect everything before you get. A lot of people have now adopted that practice. And I mean, sadly, it took a pandemic for us to actually wake up to this worldwide. And people have become a lot more, I would say, hygienists in a way, or hygienic, if you want to call it that way, or more like aware of how to prevent some of this stuff. But the work is still, ahead of us. And we just have to maintain this, because sometimes as humans, we tend to forget quickly. And, believe it or not, I just came out from overseas, and, the practices that, that I've seen currently, they're not really comforting. I can tell you, like, for example, it's a joke my wife and I were just making. Like here, if you go to McDonald's or any of the stores, right, they have to have gloves on, right? I was surprised, overseas, and I'm not going to, there were a few locations that we passed on and, and visited. People are just still maneuvering with their hands with no gloves and just grabbing stuff. And that was like shocking for me to even see that, post pandemic. I would probably think about it before, but the practices out there are, dangerously, variable from one place to the other. They vary from one place to the other. And the more education, obviously, we give people to be aware and to be cautious and conscious about how they touch, what they touch, and where they put their hands, and how they approach their bodies. But I've seen it all, and it's not really comforting. Now, one more thing that you mentioned, which is your grandmother's practices, in nature. The fact of the matter is, everything we use today, I mean, even in modern pharma, right, and modern, medicine, there's always a link to nature. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we use, yes, there's chemical and variations and things like that they use, but there's a lot of roots coming from nature, whatever that is, plants and animals and you name it, right? Even snakes and, and venomous, stuff, is actually used these days in pharma. But being in nature typically is closer to medicine, and traditionally people who lived in nature, as some people may agree or disagree on this show, because there's always different opinions about everything, they tend to live healthier lives. Even today, there's a lot of naturalists and people that want to live in natural and have farm, food and no chemicals, no pesticides and other stuff. And it is a true fact. If even health wise, they were stronger. They're still stronger. These folks that are actually closer outside of the major hubs and cities. And then you mentioned something that I love personally. It's honey, which is your base of everything. And it's funny because you mentioned all these special honeys, and there are studies actually wound care now they use honey on, and France I think is notorious about that. They kind of started this trend, and some doctors are really swearing by it. And so there's all this stuff. I know for a fact, honey is a cure for a lot of things. I mean, I've used it since I was a kid. To me, two things I use every day, and still to date, is honey and olive oil. Those are they don't leave my table. I that's how my breakfast is. It just got to be honey. And we're in Spain, same thing, honey and olive oil. That was my favorite breakfast. So there are a lot of things, in the honey, because those bees, they go and they grab these nectars, whatever, from those flowers and those all the different herbs out there, and they develop this particular substance that is cure to a lot of things. And so now you've taken all that. You've done, first of all, the study, and it took a couple of years, you said, right? And all that time was just absorbing, trying to figure out. Then you figure out to manufacture your own product. And so is it all honey based, or is it honey with some? Yeah. So 100%
honey with home. It's a medically infused. It's gotten homeopathics infused in it to deal with active illness. I mean, the United States does not recognize honey as medicine. You can't make curative claims with honey. So I speak about the honey as a separate entity that is an immune boosting, beneficial factor for your nasal biome. And honey happens to be antimicrobial. Honey happens to be prebiotic and probiotic and so you have to speak about it separately. And the curative stuff, to deal with active illness is the homeopathics, which I've infused into the honey, which makes it an OTC pharmaceutical. But my product's the only one on the market. This is what bothered me when I went to make my product. I couldn't find anything that was an adulterated honey. So in order to be a nasal spray with honey or an ointment or something where the viscosity has been changed, they have to add stabilizers because honey will turn into beer. The moment you change the water activity of honey, it attempts to ferment. It's how we made mead in the Middle Ages. It's just a fact. Honey is full of yeasts and molds naturally, but they're stable. They can't hurt you because they found honey in the Egyptian tombs that was still intact. It's bacterial static. It is stable. So unless the water activity changes, meaning it increases in viscosity and the water level grows, that's the only time the yeast and bacteria can flourish. They need water. So everything I found was using a watered down honey. And then in order to stabilize it, it had to add sodium benzoates, alcohol, or glycerin, or really high levels of grapefruit seed extracts, or things that once you put them in the nose, you're sterile. It's a sterilant. Even an excess amount of saline, like a neti pot saline, it's technically a sterilant. Bacteria can't grow in that. And so honey is unique in that it maintains its yeast and molds and its beneficial flora while it can still destroy the bad guys. So how does it, destroy some pathogens, but still maintain the healthy good guys, the good bacteria, the beneficial bugs, right? So I always thought that was fascinating that some honeys were capable of that, doing both. And so for me, that was the ultimate solution. I don't need to add glycerin to get the right consistency for it to be a nasal ointment, which is technically what it is. So I thought, leave well enough alone. Mother Nature already has this figured out. So that was my starting point, is to always maintain, keep it as natural as possible. But my problem in creating it was 2 years. I was mixing up jars of honey in my kitchen and telling everybody, here, shove this up your nose, right? And not all honey is created equal. So sometimes honey is adulterated. Sometimes it's been mixed with corn syrup if it's been sold from abroad. There's all this corruption in honey, counterfeit honey. And those things can really impact your experience. And then the really medicinal honeys, the highly effective honeys, they can be a little too caustic for the delicate nasal mucosa. So I had to find, no pun intended, the sweet spot. And then I had to blend it in such a way that it was always consistent for the user experience, because every time a beef, the same hive can produce wildly different tasting and smelling honeys, and different thicknesses and color changes from season to season, depending on the rain and whatever all else. But that took a couple of years to do. But I was really careful about my choice of honeys, because I don't want you to give your kid something I'm not going to give my kid, right? I'm that mom. I've done that work. So I contacted, being the kind of person I am, my father's best advice to me was, it never hurts to ask, right? So I, in my audacity as a mom, decide I'm going to contact the father of Manuka honey in New Zealand. So I send this guy an email and we become friends. And over the course of 2 years, he guided me. He's the one that discovered why Manuka honey is special and different, what amazing bee magic goes on, and it cannot be replicated by science no matter how hard they try. And he guided me through choosing my honeys, manipulating that honey, and verifying all of my theories. It was an amazing, he passed away shortly after, but it was an amazing gift to be given his expertise before I lost him. So that was how I formulated. It's just basically tinkering around in my kitchen for 2 years. And I'm thinking, I'm going to sell these at farmers markets. Well, you cannot sell medicine at a farmer's market. That's illegal. So I had to then go through another 2 years, and I went through my small business administration here in New Hampshire. I was like, hey, guide me. So I went to the SBDC, and they gave me mentors who guided me through FDA compliance. We got the right lawyers. We got homeopathic experts to verify my formulation. I was at a fair one time, and there was a goat cheese farmer that had great packaging. So I walked right up to him and I said, where'd you get your packaging? And he told me, and then I invested my first $5,000 in that packaging. And I was just handing it out like candy to teachers, putting it in teachers' lounges, to doctors, to nurses, to EMTs, and saying, please let me know how this works for you. And the feedback was insane. I was hearing, I had a 1-day cold, or I'm the only one who didn't get sick, or I got sick, but I could breathe through my nose the whole time. And I think those varied responses, because I've had all of those experiences, depends on your personal terrain in the moment. If your biome is strong that week or weak that week, whatever's going on with you. So I sat back and I took all that in. And then I went for my first loan. I went and I got my first loan for $50,000, and I did my first big run. And it was terrifying. As a female entrepreneur, I'm like, I'm taking money from my kids. I'm taking time away from my babies and my family. And is this worth the risk? Am I crazy? But I really believed in it from the feedback I was getting from people about, you have made an impact on the common cold and allergies. Who does that, right? Like, that's crazy. You don't even approach those topics because that's big pharma's territory, and they don't like little guys coming into that space. But I did it. And then a couple of years into it, I was selling at little local stores, and I was having a ball. I felt so successful because I had become a stay-at-home mom after teaching. And so this was really validating to see my little business grow. And you'll I don't know how you feel about baseball, but I'm a good New England girl raised by my dad. The Red Sox are everything, right? So I had read in the paper, right? So I had read in the paper that the Red Sox had a cold right after spring training, and they were all sick. It was April. So it was right after they come back from Florida. So I go on the Red Sox corporate, the roster where you see the corporate offices and everybody's name. And there was this name down there. It said massage therapist, Russell Noir. And I Googled him, and he was this older Samoan gentleman with long white braid on down the back of his, and he'd been brought by Kurt Schilling in 2003 to the team from Arizona. He already had like 4 rings at that point. And he was sort of the alternative therapist thinker, the guru for the team. So I package up with a little note, like it's 1975. I write a little handwritten note. Here you go. If anybody wants to try this, I'm a New England company. I sent it off, and I didn't think of it again. So a couple months later, it was Father's Day the next day. And I get an email at 1 a.m. from him, and I had forgotten who he was, right? And it just said, hey, I love this. The team loves it. We're traveling tomorrow. Can you please hand deliver 23 or 25 of these to Fenway tomorrow? So I'm like waking my husband up at 1 a.m. because I'm like, is this real? And then my husband's like, yes, it's real, because it's 23 guys and there's 23 guys on the roster right now. And of course, that was his validating. That's what validated it for him. So we sent it to, he got to take it on Father's Day to Fenway, and he got to go down in the clubhouse and meet people and shake hands. And it was the greatest thing ever. And that was over 5 years ago now. And now we are official sponsors of the Boston Red Sox. At every spring training, they give away our product after the first inning, and they fly my little bee around the whole stadium. I've met all the players. The Braves have put it in their clubhouse. So it's spread. So here, my crazy mom nose honey remedy is now in the Boston Red Sox clubhouse. And we got picked up by CVS because the CVS executives saw it in the clubhouse because they're the biggest corporate sponsors of Fenway. And that's, so, I'd like to say I had some like magical marketing ability that led to me being in stores nationally. It just happened to be a series of lucky things that happened because I had the guts to say, here, try my little remedy. And then it grew from there. And now post-pandemic, we're getting opportunities left and right because of supply chain breakdown. So my little US made company, normally I could never compete for the shelf space next to Clorox and Johnson & Johnson and those guys, because they're the ones that own most of our cold remedies. And here we are getting little opportunity. We're growing like crazy on grocery shelves all over the nation now.
Wow.
I know, that was a lot. I'm sorry.
No. Actually, you there's nothing to be sorry about. As a matter of fact, I'm just absorbing it and listening. You actually, in the last 10 minutes, we've covered so much powerful stuff that can be taught in education, and I'm talking higher education for a lot. We talked business, we talked entrepreneurship, we talked about opportunity, we talked about marketing, we talked about motivation, inspiration. We talked about everything. We talked even about the do's and don'ts and how to build your business. So you crunched all that in very little time. So I'd like to just no, I love it, and I'm gonna break it a little bit just further. So this is what we can highlight for people that are listening worldwide. The first thing I'm gonna say, you heard it, folks. An idea had become a giant thing, and for me, in my eyes, it is giant. You said it, and it's not easy to actually be on the shelf with the big boys and the big girls and the big guys and the big corporations, and you did that, and it was dairy, but for the right, purpose. You had a mission, you had a vision, and you wanted to do something right, and you did it. And things happen. That's the other thing. Nothing happened by chance. I mean, if you had not sent that email, nothing would have happened. If you have not reached out to New Zealand to learn about Manuka, it wouldn't have happened. Most people have hesitation in their life, and they want something. I bet you everybody watching right now and listening, they probably have an idea. They don't think it's going to happen, or they don't believe in themselves enough to actually say, let me just go after it and see what happens. And I just wanted to capture this piece of the business part. I mean, you are the CEO of the company, and you are a visionary, literally, because you saw an opportunity and something that was dear to you. And you also earned your rank to be actually, your own boss and do your own thing and really invest in a lot of things, but also motivate people and inspire people. And the idea that you reach out to the Red Sox, I mean, that's a pretty cool thing. I mean, like it's like in my case, it would be like reaching out to the Yankees, say, "Hey, Yankees," I had to say that. I'm sorry, because no,
I love the Yankees. The Yankees give me my greatest moments every fall. Are you kidding?
Well, listen, they're all good. They're all good. I love them all. But the fact of the matter, most people would not even go to that extreme, like, hey, let me check out these guys, right? But it was correct. They had the season. They had, you read something about them being not feeling well. You have something that may work for them. Why not? It's natural. You didn't lose anything by sending them the email and just saying, hey, and then you give them the testers, and they love them, and now you are actually part of the team, and now you're all over. Listen. You're in Fenway. That's a pretty cool thing. I mean, just your bees all over the place. Cool. Now I'm gonna have to look at the games.
Yeah, only the spring training games. I can't afford Fenway, but I'm in JetBlue.
All right. Hey, there you go. So, but
Yeah.
again, you're slowly but surely developing to that icon, right? To that level. And you know what? Why not? People listening, watching with a dream right now, or the vision, or something that they want to do to help people. I mean, it's a legacy. I mean, the person that helped you with the honey basics, right? He's not here with us, but he is with us. His legacy
Mhm.
stayed behind, and he took that knowledge and gave it to you, and now you were taking it and sharing with others. And by the way, we're not, no matter what we do, and as a small business or as a producer of new products. I mean, these guys, and we're talking about big pharma and these companies, they already have their levels. We're not a threat to them in a way, but at the same time, people do want something different every now and then, something unique, and you created that, something natural. A lot of people today want the natural piece as an option. They want something different. You also covered something about like, for example, you cannot sell in the farmer market, medicine stuff. Your stuff is really medicine, but it's not medicine. It's natural stuff, but it is, quote unquote medicine. That's how it's developed. So therefore it is medicine. What I'm saying, it's when you put it in the farmer's market, it's not going to be perceived as that, and you can. But many people may not have known that fact that you shared with us today. The fact that you went to your local small business administration and did that, right? And that's the other thing. People see, you took the steps to learn every single thing. It's not like, I got it, it's going to happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. That's worth something. And you did it. It took years of development. I love your R&D. I mean, kitchen R&D business, sharing with people, dropping your research, on your testers all over and getting the feedback. But again, it took money, investment, time. It wasn't like just, hey, let's just, I got the product, let's put it in the market. You did the due diligence. You took the steps that are necessary, and you took the risk. That's the other part. People are unwilling to take risks. No risk, no reward, right? You did take the risk. You even went and got a loan. I mean,
Scary.
Exactly. You're down for 50, K, and you're not sure what the ROI is going to be and whether it's going to work. What happens? All these questions, I can tell you, I've been in your position in a way with business, and it is not easy. I am currently doing similar stuff, and it is you take money, you lose some, you gain some. It doesn't matter. You got to keep playing. You got to keep doing, and that's it. But the overall picture is that your mission is still the same. You still want to cure. You still want to help people have an easy allergy season, a cold, prevent all that stuff. And you also gave us some medical stuff here, because in essence, now we know where this whole thing happens clearer, and how we can even prevent it. Now let's talk about and I try to kind of almost summarize all the different parts of the last 10 minutes, but now let's talk about how your remedy or your products work. I mean, I know there's some nasal swab business going on, and there's some stuff. So let's talk about the administration of the product. Well, the product.
It's really, it's funny. Nasal swab. I chose nasal swab because I'm a neti pot baby. Like, if you spray something in my nose, I'm like, it burns. I freak out. It's awful. So I can't imagine how children feel about that. I mean, I also learned that when you spray something with force up your nose, you run the risk, especially with children because of the shallow sinuses, you run the risk of sending infection higher up beyond where it should be, beyond where it would ever naturally potentially take root. So you don't want to do that. So for me, a nasal swab just made sense. And of course, now the whole world understands that nasal swabs, when they're not a 6-inch COVID swab halfway to your brain, that it's pretty painless. You just put it on the edge and just inside the nostril, and then your cilia do the rest of the work. And with and it's a tiny amount. It's the size of an O on a keyboard is the dose. So it's minuscule. And then your own body heat just does the work. I usually tell my kids, if we're in preventative mode, if we just want to boost our nasal biome, to use it 3 times a week before bed. So if you've got anything trying to colonize, it can potentially impact that. But if you're actively sick, if one of my kids my kids are swimmers, so they're in the pool with spit and snot constantly. And if they're actively starting to get sick, we go 3 times a day to try to lessen the colonization load and do something about the symptoms and take the inflammation down. So that's how you use it. It's really straightforward. A little tiny swab just inside the nose using your own Q-tip from your home.
Well, so it's funny you talked about swabs here, and you mentioned the testing, or at least you alluded to it. when those long swabs, initially they were like literally going deep. We had reports of people get damaged, but I mean, I think most recently, I mean, in the later stages, I mean, now they don't go that deep anymore, and so they kind of discovered that it just works the same way. So that's the good news. But you're right, I'm very sensitive. I've always been sensitive on my nose. If you touch my nose, I start sneezing. If anything goes in my nose as dust, I will start sneezing. There's no, like I had mentioned earlier, I've grown with allergies, and they're inherited, so there's nothing I can do about them. They're seasonal, or dust. If sometimes even temperature changes can make me sneeze literally easily, anything. So I'm very sensitive. My friends used to make a joke, if they want me to have fun with me, they just touch my nose, and they just laugh out. I'll be like all over the place. And so I've been, like really sensitive to it. My nose is so big because people will touch it all the time. but really, you've taken it because you took in consideration the children and the sensitivity, but also the fact that, to your point, if there's too much pressure, that stuff goes up. And then it causes. So really, you've looked at every single angle and you put it to play and to practice, and it has been effective and it's working. And then now it's been years in the making, and the products are just selling because they are good. And that's the other thing. Your product, if it didn't work, it wouldn't be where it is today. It obviously showed result, and people will appreciate something that is good, and they will swear by it. And then word of mouth. This podcast, for example, this radio show is out there. People are going to be all over. And by the way, this is, like I said, not just in the States, everywhere. So someone somewhere around the world would probably hear. And I'm not sure if the product is available all over or in some countries. Versus
Anybody
others.
can buy it from our website. We ship worldwide.
There you go. So that saves me that question for later. So I got it out of the way. But it's amazing that you've done this. So now this is one product, right? So there's more products that you have. Or is it just?
Well, we have Allergy Be Gone and Cold Be Gone. And the Allergy Be Gone has a couple of additional homeopathic antihistamines to take that reaction out of the nasal passages. But the kids and adult products are almost identical. The only difference is external packaging, because in the United States, if you want to be in a pediatric aisle, the FDA requires pediatric. It has to say for kids. But all of our products are safe for over the age of 1. So if you only find the pediatric products on the shelves, they're just as effective for adults. It's the same base formulation across the board. And it's kind of like the first time you look at Excedrin migraine versus Excedrin extra strength, and you read the back and you realize they're identical. That's the FDA at work there. So
it's a lot about even like the regular, even Tylenols, when you read the stuff, they do give it, you can give it to the higher, to the adults, but you just have to multiply the dosage. I mean, it's amazing, but you're right. Like, you find these things through research and really like seeking through things and asking the right questions. But you've done all that, and really, first of all, for me personally, I just I say thumbs up, kudos, all the success. I mean, for what your journey has become and has, where it started and why it started. You're literally a true inspiration, motivation to anyone watching right now, listening, and also you are helping people, and that's the beauty of it. Now, sometimes you have visions, but it could be a vision where people are not going to be really helped with it. In this case, you're winning every single reward here because you're doing it from a financial aspect, for you and your family. It's great for the kids, for your children, for the world, and also like you're spreading this particular formula across anywhere in on the hemisphere or around the globe. Whatever you can buy this thing, they can order it and benefit from it. And now my thing is, I know honey has been there has been debates about the bees and the lack of the bees these days and the production of the honey. Have you experienced any difficulty with that? Because I mean, there is some sort of worldwide. I mean, with the weathers and everything. Yeah. I mean, there's this discussion about the bees even disappearing. Which, by the way, if they do, it will be catastrophic because I think it will end human. And by the way, some people may like, are you really sure about that? Does that even correlate? Well, there's some studies about what the link between the bees and us on this earth, and our living, food and everything else because of pollination and all that. But again, I'm not going to go into that discussion. Maybe we'll get an expert to break that down for us. But
absolutely.
In your world, that is your main core product. Mm-hmm. How do you foresee to do that? And I do want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, but let's answer that question.
We're absolutely seeing that. You have to buy your honey seasons in advance and secure it, because you have to be prepared for the variability of hive die-off and bad weather and things that can affect production. So we're always a couple of seasons ahead in our purchasing, just to cover our butts. So if we get a gap, if we see that this producer doesn't produce enough, we can go get some over here. But there's so much corruption in the honey world. And then when you couple that with the way that the bees are being affected, not only by, I believe 5G technology might have a role in it, but also definitely glyphosate, that has a role in it. Those things are all synergistically affecting basically the most important little creature on our planet, which is the bees. I just posted a quote the other day, which you might love, and I hope I can pull it up. It was, before I was 6 years old, my grandparents and my mother taught me that if all the green things were taken from the earth, there could be no life. If all the four-legged creatures are taken, there can be no life. If all the winged creatures are taken, there can be no life. But if all the human beings are taken away, life will flourish, right? And that was from Russell Means, a Lakota Nation Native American. And that always resonates with me, because when you think about the hierarchy of all the creatures, the bee is the king of all of that. So that's what made me think of that.
No. Well, I appreciate it. By the way, that fact is, whether we like it or not, it is true. Because I always said humans we destroy nature. Animals don't. I mean, you can go to the woods and you can see that there's no garbage. They clean after themselves. Well, unfortunately, in the cities and stuff, we can see how humans can be a little bit, destructive. So humans tend to destroy themselves. We are, unfortunately, that's just how we are. And hopefully, we can change for better. I mean, you watch these alien movies and they always kind of portray us as the lower or inferior race, and we always have this fear of like these aliens are going to come in from like, thousands of light years away and just come in here and destroy us because we're the little guys. But the fact of the matter, those are just, I guess, ideas so we can realize, what we do in this world and how we can do it. But you're right. The bee has a whole impact on everything, on the culture. I mean, the agriculture, I would say, and the food and chain and all the stuff. I mean, naturally, if they disappear, it's a problem for us. But you mentioned something that twice. Now you mentioned again corruption and bad honey. So that is a true, unfortunately, that is a fact. Not all the honey is made equal, as you mentioned. And there is some fake honey out there, and there's some difference between raw honey, or cooked honey, whatever the processed honey, versus even the price today. I mean, if you look at the honey price, has almost doubled up. It's crazy. Like back in the days, it was cheap. Now you can't even afford sometimes honey, and let alone the real honey. I mean, you mentioned Manuka is like very expensive for a little jar.
Yeah.
So.
You want to get Manuka honey that's rated with the UMF system, which Dr. Molen invented. There's Manuka honeys now that are inventing their own systems of rating to decide, to advertise. And they just did that because they don't want to go through the appropriate measuring of his system. And maybe their testing is fantastic, but how would the public know any of this unless you're a complete honeybee nerd like me that's just spends way too many hours researching all of this? So it's really hard for the public to trust and to know what's good. So when they're looking for quality raw honey, if you're looking for raw honey to eat for your allergies, which is a really valid thing to do, go to your local beekeepers or your local farmers market and look for the deepest, darkest local honey you can find. And that's going to be the healthiest stuff you can possibly eat for your local allergies.
Thank you. And actually, believe it or not, I mentioned I'm in Jersey and we have a lot of farms. So right now, I mean, whatever we get a chance, we can go to those farms and grab some local honey, and it does make a difference, as opposed to the regular honey that you can buy just off the shelf. So it's a big deal. But the concept of having fake honey out there, because you can make literally, to your point, syrup and all this stuff, and out of sugar. There's also there's a discussion of like some of the hives and what they eat. Some are made of just sugar, like they're fed sugar versus, for example, natural, elements or flowers and things like that, herbs. So that's also, I guess, a question mark. And again, we're not talking about the honey specifically today. It was more about the product that you have. But that is one thing. Now, one question that came to mind. I mean, you are ordering your stuff in advance. Have you thought about having your own, hives?
No, but I am convinced there are super honeys in the United States. We just haven't identified them yet. Like when I was little, my grandmother would talk about this really dark honey from up Maine that she thought could cure anything. And so I'm always on the hunt, and everybody should be in every state because they have located super honeys in every region of the world. So why haven't we found ours in the US? I bet there's some super honey in every state, some dark honey that is that should be in all our cabinets for boo-boos and for eating and don't be afraid to put it in your tea. I know they say heat destroys honey, but hives can get really hot and they still have their value. So, eat your honey, go find your super dark honey because somebody somewhere in the United States has honey that is healing. All honey's healing, but
I mean, all of it is. But again, as long as it's natural honey and not manufactured honey.
On Netflix right now, they have a series called Rotten, I think. And there's I forget what season it is, but there's something called Guns and Honey is one of the episodes, Guns and Honey. And it dives into the honey corruption scandals of a few years ago. And the hive dives out and it watches like a true crime novel. I mean, maybe not to only people that are obsessed with honey like me, but I was riveted. So if anybody wants to know about the corruption in the honey world and the science and the detective work that the governments have gone to try to intercept and change that, it's all in that little documentary. And it's fascinating. It's only like 40 minutes long.
Well, listen, I will definitely check it out. I think I've seen actually the documentary. I didn't watch it, but I've seen it on the queues there. But actually, you mentioned something about super honey worldwide. I can tell you, I mean, I just came from Spain and Morocco, and they do have some real solid solid honey business going on there. I mean, the southern part of Spain, they have some real powerful stuff, and I'm not talking commercial. They actually sell it from their mountains and the farms. Mm-hmm. Same thing in Morocco. They have some real beekeepers, and they're in the mountains and places where it's very natural, and it's not really the commercial stuff. You can buy it really from the hive. I mean, from the keepers, and so it's kind of natural. Some of it is actually fed with sugars and stuff, but a lot of it is also natural because they have like lavender and all these things, the cloves, whatever. So they use all that. But again, those are two examples that I just literally tested, their products, and they're pretty good. Like I said, I love honey, so I don't use sugar. And again, we have diabetes in the family, so we tend to, if we substitute, that's our sugar, that's our sweet, So, Joyce, it's been real. I mean, we covered a lot of grounds. So we know where the products are. So you mentioned CVS, you mentioned some of the large services. Well, where will be some other places where people can purchase your product besides the online?
Well, we just got picked up by, believe it or not, the weirdest placement was Travel Centers of America, which there's the Travel Centers of America near all of us at this point. They're all over the country. We got picked up by Fresh Thyme, which is most of the Midwest. We got picked up by Cub Grocers, Winn-Dixie.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, there's so many new placements. I can't even begin to tell you all of them. Well, I won't get it right.
It's on the site, right? I'm assuming.
We try to keep up. We're actually doing a really bad job of keeping up with the new placements. We just got Fresco y Mas, Harvey's Supermarkets, Winn-Dixie, Cub Foods, Acme Fresh Markets around Chicago. I love the Fresco y Mas one is all over Miami, all over Southwestern Florida. So that's really cool because now I'm reaching a whole new community, and the Hispanic community loves natural. Those ladies get me. They love natural products because a lot of those Grammys have always used honey as medicine. So that's been a fantastic placement, and I'm thrilled. We're growing left and right. So it's a real hit or miss. I would call your local health food store and say, hey, are you carrying Colby Gone? And many of them are, but it's hard to tell you exactly where we are right now because it's gone crazy.
Well, again, if a business owner or market, is listening right now, somebody is out there. Hey, there's an opportunity. Maybe you can reach out to Joyce, and maybe this is a product you want to carry. What about like Whole Foods and things? I mean, they're supposed to be like the pioneers.
We're in consideration. That's a huge process to get into a grocery store. It takes like months and months and months. And Whole Foods is one of the. I would love to get into Whole Foods because I think it would have a really fantastic audience there. But it's like a 6-phase process. And so we're somewhere in that 6 phases. I don't know where.
No, but listen, that's great. You again, like everything else, you're in there, you're already in the process. So, but hopefully they listen. I mean, your stuff is your stuff is good. I mean, listen, the Red Sox, right? Right. They have taste. They know what they want. They will not, get some stuff that's not going to be good for them, and they need to play. So, but no. So first of all, congrats on all the work you've done and the successes, and just wish you a lot more of it. And I hope that you're in every single, store and supermarket or food, place, whatever in the States, Canada, and parts of the world, if not the whole world. Listen, we need some of this stuff out there, and hopefully people can benefit from it. One last question that probably people would have. I mean, what's the pricing? I mean, this is natural.
It goes anywhere from $10.99 to $13.99, depending on the retailer or whatever sale they're running that month. That's the price range I've seen it. But it has upward of 70 doses because you use so little. So it really can stretch between kids and the whole family for about 2 to 3 months.
You got me at $10.99.
It lasts a while.
No, you got me at $10.99 because you these days $10 can buy you anything. So nothing that's.
It's a tiny bottle, but it goes a long, long way.
No, listen, I mean, for medicine, for something that is healthy, listen, you got to pay some price for something that's good. I mean, especially when it's made correctly. So I think the price range is definitely very acceptable. And at least in my book, and I'm not speaking for other people, but, if you're sick, you would pay whatever it takes to actually be healthier if you can. And, you can go to Walmart and buy some stuff, but it may not be as effective as something that is just natural. So, hey, whatever you are, you got to make that decision and then get the right stuff. But this is available, and also you said it online. You can ship, so it's easier. So, folks, this is it. Please check out the website. It will be on the description of the show. Joyce, any last words of wisdom, advice that you want to share with our audiences today?
I would say my number one thing, besides get your Colby on. It's a great little tool to have in your toolbox. It is. Not the solution to everything, but have it on hand because you want it before you feel the thing in your throat and you're getting sick. But my number one advice to moms, because I'm a germ fighting mom, and to dads, families everywhere, is stop touching your face. It's that simple. You can touch the whole dirty, filthy world. Don't be afraid to touch the ATM machine. Don't be afraid to blah, blah, blah. But when you get in your car, use your hand sanitizer. And I like to use natural hand sanitizers. I literally use Everclear 151 because it's a non-hormone disruptor. Because if you're going to use it that much, use something that doesn't disrupt hormones. But to not be afraid of our world, it really comes down to only 1% of the time, unless somebody sneezes or coughs directly into your face or right beside you, you are not at risk. We need to stop being afraid. It is literally all about, this is called fomite transmission, hands to face. It's all about that. So if we just started thinking about when you're out of your home, your hands are not clean the moment you leave your house. So stop scritching your eyeballs so casually because you're giving yourself the flu. So that's my number one piece of advice to everybody. If you have a loved one who's on chemo, if you've got kids in school, stop touching your faces. That's it. That's all we got to do. And get your Colby on.
Just thank you. I love it. I love the way you said it. It's been real. It's been an honor. Thank you so much for the time, for sharing your history, your story, your success, and your tips. I mean, you've given us so much stuff that I think every angle, every walk of life here can take something from this discussion and apply it to their personal lives. The easy way would be just using the product and being healthier, and the rest is like how to do business, how to do your research, how to do due diligence, and we can talk about all that. So thank you so much for being with us. Folks, as you can see, we had a great time. So we'll be looking forward to the next show, next topic, and next guest. For now, Hurricane H here. We'll be talking soon. Bye-bye.